Good day and welcome to this Gina program where we take a look at the 6 months performance of the Ministry of Communities. With me today is the Minister responsible for that sector, the Honourable Minister Bob. Welcome, sir, to the program.
Thank you for having me, Bob.
All right, for the viewers out there, this is a new ministry, so to speak. What are the duties or functions of this new ministry as it is so set up?
Yes, it is correct that this is a newly created ministry, and it encompasses what was formerly two ministries, namely the Ministry of Housing and Water, as well as the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development. The obvious question will be, why the merging of those two ministries into one? And the simple answer would be that it has to do with a focus on the more efficient delivery of critical governmental services, and to ensure that there is greater degree of cohesion as well as collaboration between those four areas, namely housing, water, local government, as well as regional development, to allow for a more rational and efficient delivery. I would add to that in essence, the focus is on the human condition and human needs, and this is where the rationalization of those four departments come in.
Okay, now the President had mentioned earlier that in order to build a strong country, we need to have strong regions and strong communities. How is this being put over through your ministry?
Paul, there is a strategic difference between this administration and the ones that preceded it. This administration and President Granger is committed to meaningful devolution of authority and for strong role for our regions in the management and development of our country. Our constitutional provisions relating to regional administration came into being in the year 1980 with the establishment of our 10 regions for the purposes not only of administration but for management and development of our entire country. And this came about out of a recognition that our country is too large to be either effectively or efficiently managed from the center. And this is why this particular regime or framework came into being, to allow for more engaged management at the regional level of our country. Unfortunately, it has been the case that our constitutional provisions requiring such decentralization and devolution have not been honored. This administration, however, is committed to, if you will, picking up the pieces and moving towards meaningful devolution of authority and decentralization of governmental services. In this regard, as you've correctly reminded our viewers, our President has made the point that it is out of strong regions that we will have a strong country. And this is the strategic vision or architecture of this administration, is to ensure that there is effective and meaningful decentralization of authority and a strong role for our RDCs in the management of our respective regions.
Now, you've been pushing on behalf of government, of course, the restoration of local government elections, for example. This is one of the means of putting power back into the hands of the people and having them basically control their own destiny in the regions as much as they can.
Paul, we'll come to the issue of local government and the local government elections in a minute. But if I can take our viewers back to the question of regional development. The administration is, as I said, committed to moving in this direction. And it arises out of a recognition that real regional development is essential for us to deliver on the promise of a good life for all Guyanese. Such regional development, however, is only possible in an environment of regional empowerment. I think we should accept that this issue has been quite a problematic one, and it is one that poses a huge challenge. It is one, in fact, that successive administrations have grappled with since its introduction in 1980 of these 10 regions that I referred to a moment ago. The way forward, however, lies in giving meaning to Articles 76 and 77 of our Constitution. Allow me briefly to remind viewers, or to relate to viewers rather, what these two constitutional articles imposes on our body politic. Article 76 says that Parliament may provide for regional democratic councils to raise their own revenues and to dispose of them for the benefit and welfare of their areas. And Article 77 says that the development program for each region shall be integrated into the national development plans, and the government shall allocate funds to each region to enable it to implement its development program. The obvious question is, how can these objectives be met by the ministry? I would say that it would be dependent on two key or critical factors. The first would be political will. The second would be to ensure that there is capacity within our RDCs to be able to effectively discharge on that responsibility or to accomplish those objectives.
Okay. Now, there is the political will.
That is the self-evident question.
Right. Since the first,
because in the absence of that political will,
you won't get anywhere.
We will continue to labor under the conditions that obtained in the past, where these constitutional provisions were there and they were never given meaning.
Okay.
The answer is yes. There exists the political will at the highest level of this administration to move towards meaningful regional empowerment, devolution of authority, and decentralization.
Building capacity, yes.
And as well as building capacity. You will ask, where is the evidence of this? When, following the general and regional elections, when our regional chairpersons and vice chairs were sworn in by President Granger on the 10th of June, they were given a charge. They were tasked by President Granger to craft action plans for the development of their respective regions, which we refer to as Plans of Action for Regional Development, or PARDs. Again, this is consistent with the President's vision that strong regions will lead to a strong country. But these PARDs, as we can see from Article 77, which I've just related, they arise from what is being imposed by Article 77, which is the need for each region to have their own developmental plans. Following that charge by President Granger, the central government has grasped that mantle and firstly had convened a leadership forum at the end of July, where all of the 10 RDCs were brought together. In fact, all 203 of our regional democratic councillors for a leadership forum that was held under the theme Unveiling a Vision for Regional Empowerment. At that forum, the ministry committed itself to lending meaningful support to each of our RDCs in the crafting of their PARDs. Following that activity, Region 10 was selected out of a consultative program to be a pilot region for the crafting of an initial PARD. This work is being supported by the Ministry of Finance, together with external consultants, as well as local consultants that have been engaged both by the Ministry of Finance as well as the Ministry of Communities. following initial work that was done, detailed work in the crafting of Region 10's PRD, roundtable discussion was convened with all of the regions so that they could learn from some of the activities that were part of that process.
Yes.
I should say, however, that what the ministry has seen is that there's been a greater willingness on the part of our 4 hinterland regions to embrace this concept and to seek to take ownership of the regions by the crafting of development plans and programs to be able to manage and develop their respective regions. However, this is not being to the same extent, this is not materialized in the cases of some of our coastal regions.
Okay.
Nonetheless, the Ministry of Community will continue to provide leadership to our regions and to push this process forward.
I think what you're trying to get is that the regions should know what, or they should have a sense of what they need to do to develop themselves and the region, because they live in the region and they know what facilities they need and so on.
This is the intention and this is the direction, but by the same token, we should recognize that there is insufficient capacity within our RDCs to be able to move towards this direction, and this is where support is needed from the central government. Support is needed from this ministry, and this is where we have made it clear at the level of the central government and ministry that we are here to support our RDCs, to assist them in translating and transforming the ideas that they would have arising out of their intimate knowledge of both the resources that are resident in the region, that it is only by the exploitation of those resources, but it is this capacity gap that exists that the role of the central government is needed. And we have made it clear to each of the RDCs that the ministry is here to support them in trying to build this capacity and to provide institutional strengthening to allow them to develop in a meaningful way their PRDs.
Okay, now take you back here now. You mentioned local government elections. How has that been going? The planning, the execution. I remember when you first came in, you were bent on fulfilling that promise that local government elections should be held as soon as possible in conjunction with GCOM. How was that process been going so far?
That is absolutely correct, Paul, that the administration, when in opposition, had bemoaned the fact that citizens were denied their constitutional right to elect councillors or managers to manage and develop their respective areas. And following our accession into office, we have delivered on that principle. And yes, we have named the date on which local government elections will be held. That date, of course, being widely known, March 18th of next year. It is widely accepted that our local government system, that the stresses that have been placed under it have resulted in severely damaging the capacity of our local councils and degrading their capacity, leading to a general dysfunctionality with regards to their ability to discharge their responsibilities. It would not be unfair of me to say that the local government system, as a result of the many stresses that has been placed on it, has almost resulted in the collapse of that system. Therefore, it is the obligation and responsibility of the administration to fix that broken system. You have touched on local government elections. That is the first of what we see as a three-stage approach towards the fixing or rehabilitation of this broken system. So, firstly, we will have the elections, which will allow for the democratic renewal or for the election of councillors via the democratic process. The major responsibility for the holding of those elections, of course, is that of GCOM.
Yes.
It is the other two stages of this repair and rehabilitation process that is the principal responsibility of the Ministry of Communities. The second of the three stages would be the need to focus on capacity building and institutional strengthening within these new councils when they come into being. Because what is going to happen is that following the elections of March 18th next year, these new councillors will by definition bring considerable enthusiasm and energy, but many of them may be lacking the experience and the capacity to properly discharge their responsibility. The ministry therefore has this responsibility of providing training to both our local government officers, namely our town clerks, overseers, administrative personnel, etc., as well as to the councillors. It is this task that the ministry is currently engaged in by putting together training manuals to be used for this purpose. Of significance as well is that there is a strategic reorientation taking place right here within the ministry, where key personnel are now informed and educated as to the new philosophy, which is to equip and empower our local democratic organs to function with the independence that is guaranteed to them by and under our constitution. So going forward, what is going to happen following the elections of March 18th next year is that there will be no more central control. This ministry is not going to dictate and dominate with regards to the functioning of our local government organs. That there will be no more micromanagement. So that hand of control
It's been removed.
that existed in the past has and will be removed, and in its place it will be replaced by a hand of cooperation, collaboration.
A partnership.
We will be going forward in a spirit of partnership.
So you basically want a new attitude basically going forward with the new elections, starting with the ministry.
The
and so on.
new strategic direction will allow for our local government organs to function with the authority as well as autonomy that are needed for them to be effective. However, I need to come to the third step of the three-step approach,
Yes.
and perhaps this is the most important of the three, and it has to do with funding. Where our councils will get their money from to allow for them to be able to effectively and efficiently discharge
These things cost money.
in their responsibility, because the effective maintenance of our communities will cost money. Universally, it is known that local councils receive their funding from local sources that is within their jurisdiction. However, this has not been so in our case. What has happened in the past is that central government has been the main provider in the main for the financial resources that our local council requires to be able to discharge their responsibilities. And perhaps we may ask ourselves, why was this the case? My answer would be that it was part of the philosophy whereby central government wanted to have a greater say in the functioning of these organs, and therefore, if they were the ones who were providing the money,
Once you control
he
the
who pays the piper
Pays the
calls
tune.
the tune.
Right.
So if by controlling the purse strings, you can direct the work of our local councils, you can dictate, you can dominate. But in the process, what you're doing is you're suffocating our local communities. Our constitution says that local democratic organs shall have responsibility to manage and develop their affairs. What they need is cooperation from the central government, not control. So going forward, the ministry is engaged in a comprehensive study of this issue, where our councils will receive their money. And let me say this, there will be both a revaluation as well as a valuation of properties, and that exercise will start in the first half of 2016. Following that, it is Cabinet that will then have to pronounce as to what, if any, percentage of a council's budget will be provided by central government and how much will be self-generated
From within the region.
from within the jurisdiction or within the area of the local government council. Because when once we are talking issues of taxation, these are all, of course, politically sensitive issues, and it is the final determination will have to be made by central government as to how much of the required finances that any given council will need, how much will be provided by the central government, and how much will have to be self-generated. So it is steps 2 and 3 that the ministry is currently engaged in as part of this repair and rehabilitation process.
Okay. Now, are there bodies being set up to oversee this entire process? Commissions or?
Yes, there is one important commission that has been created by Parliament that will be expected to play a supportive role to the Ministry of Communities as it relates to oversight of our local government organs. And this will be the Local Government Commission, commission that was actually established by the last Parliament with the enactment of the Local Government Commission Act. However, for that commission to be operational, it required a commencement order from the subject minister. And that order was not given by my predecessor, Minister Whitaker. However, funding for the Local Government Commission will be provided for in the 2016 budget, which is expected to be tabled early in 2016. It will allow for the creation of the commencement and the operationalization of the Local Government Commission. That order will be given, that commission will come into being at about the same time when the new councils come into being. And that commission will have responsibility for regulation and oversight of all of our local government organs. So that day-to-day responsibility for the management of our local government organs will be handled by the Local Government Commission. Our readers might ask themselves, why the need for a commission as opposed to a central government ministry? And in broad terms, that commission was identified as part of the local government reform process, where the vision was that we should depoliticize the functioning and the workings of the local government system. So by the creation of an autonomous constitutional body, it is part and parcel of that vision that takes politics out of the management of our commission, and in this case with the creation of a commission that will have day-to-day oversight over the workings of our local government organs. But of course the ministry will still have broad responsibility for the operations. The ministry will not be totally divorced from the general management of our local government organs.
All right, now going forward into the future, of course, what are some of the plans that you have, or what are some of the areas you want to tackle as minister? You're responsible for the community. And I know we have local government elections going on, and that is a big one. But going forward still, what other areas you want to seek to address?
Paul, this administration is seized by a strategic focus, which is that there can be no human development without local democracy. And it is the absence of this local democracy, of which a functioning local government system is a critical or essential component, that we are committed to and we are focused on. And therefore, it is not possible for us to either de-emphasize or overemphasize the importance for us to have meaningful local democracy. Perhaps I can make this point, that local government or local government elections by and of itself will not necessarily lead to local democracy. Because if we had, for example, local government elections under the previous administration, I think we could have very well have a situation where the central government, even though we have new councils come into being, where the central government would have been imbued with the same philosophy or mindset, that of control and seeking to dominate our local councils,
Nothing much would have changed.
and nothing much would have changed.
Okay.
We would have had frustration with these new councils. They would have not had the ability to operate with independence. Perhaps I can use as an illustration the case of the Georgetown municipality. Our viewers will recall that the central government at the time was vigorously articulating a case that there was one individual, the town clerk, who single-handedly stood between absolute chaos in the city of Georgetown and an incompetent city council. But what have we seen since the new administration came into being? We have seen the replacement of that individual, or the removal rather of that individual, and replacement with a new town clerk. And even though we still have that same town council that was accused of all manners of shortcomings and lack of capacity and inability to manage the affairs of the council, we can literally see before our very eyes a transformation in the city of Georgetown. But all that has happened is that that oppressive hand of the central government has been removed, and it was replaced by a hand of collaboration, a hand of friendship, as you said, a hand of partnership. So this is why it is important for the point to be made that it is not only elections that by themselves are necessary, but that what is even more important is a mindset or a philosophy,
and the political will,
as well as the political will. And we have seen that in the case of Georgetown. What is going to happen after the elections of March 18th and the creation of 71 new councils? We're going to have a situation where that, as I said, the enthusiasm and fresh energy and the new blood that will accompany those 71 new councils, coupled with the strategic philosophy of the administration to allow those organs to function with independence, we're going to see that revitalization, we're going to see that transformation that we can already see in Georgetown, in communities all across our country.
in effect.
And this is where, as I said, the human development that we recognize that is inextricable, inseparable from local democracy, that with the realization of local democracy, we will see a rebirth and a renewal and a transformation of our communities all across our country. So yes, the Ministry of Communities has a responsibility for the state of affairs in all of our communities. We recognize that there is crisis in all of our communities, but the ministry will discharge this responsibility towards our communities via these organs, these new councils when they come into being, and it will do so under a framework where these councils will be allowed to operate with independence and the authority that is provided for them under the Constitution.
Right.
And meaningful support will be provided to allow for the councils to be able to effectively discharge their responsibility towards the citizens of their respective areas.
Just a few days remaining in this year, 2015. What is anticipated for 2016?
Paul, in relation to our responsibility regarding regional development and even local government, our principal focus would be job creation, that there is growth and development within our regions. In addition to that, I would say that we need to work towards a situation where there is more effective administration as well as delivery of governmental services.
Going forward beyond 2016 now?
Beyond 2016, and if we are to look to the period up to 2020, I would take the opportunity to say that we do have some concrete objectives, and among these would be, firstly, that each region would have crafted their action plans, those PARDs that I referred to earlier. Secondly, that within our regions and that within our citizens in each region, that there is greater sense of regional ownership, identity, and regional pride. These concepts are essential for us to be able to move forward in relation to effective regional development. Thirdly, would be the need for us to have agricultural as well as technical and vocational institutes to begin with within each of our hinterland regions, if not all of our regions. This was a commitment that was given by President Granger when in opposition. Next would be that there is greater administrative as well as professional capacities within our RDCs, for example, as it relates to the availability of doctors, nurses, teachers, etc. And finally, if we to put those things together, that there is greater capacity within each of our RDCs for effective decision making as it relates to the allocation of both human, financial, and natural resources within each regions, because it is that will determine the pace of development and the successes within our regions to allow for them, as we said at the beginning, to be strong, which is the only way that we can have a strong country. So those are some of the key objectives that we have for the year ahead, as well as going forward to the end of the first term.
Minister, thanks again. Any final words?
Yes, Paul, it would be, again, to thank you for having me, and perhaps to say that these few minutes that we have had are not sufficient, they're not adequate for me to promote the vision of this ministry and of this administration. And I look forward to conducting another interview, perhaps that will allow us to get into a little bit more detail early in the new year.
Definitely.
I'd also like to take this opportunity to wish you and all of the staff at GINA and NCN and their families a Merry Christmas and peaceful and happy and prosperous New Year, as well as to all of the citizens of our country.
And on behalf of the state media, same to you and yours and your employees.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.